Jack is a great guy. He's written a fantastic book. Everybody's talking about it. Go get it. And he's been my friend right from the beginning of this whole beautiful event. And we're going to turn it around and make our country great again. Amen.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back. Phoenix, Arizona. We're here for election week. We're on election eve. New York City is about to elect a Marxist migrant to become the mayor of America's greatest city. And I wanted to bring on Brianna Lyman from the Federalist, the election correspondent, to discuss what seems to be a glitch, but I think is actually a model for the new Democrat Party. Brianna, how are you?
Hey, Jack, thanks for having me.
So here's my thesis, and Elon Musk was just talking about this on Joe Rogan as well, and he said the reason that the shutdown is going on is because the Democrats want to increase and continue these mass immigration programs because that's how they're importing new voters to try to turn the United States into a one-party state. And so when I look at New York City and the way that they've changed the electorate since 9/11, right? Never forget, well, the people who are voting today weren't even around to remember it in the first place. Mamdani wasn't even a U.S. citizen when Donald Trump was elected the first time. So the Mamdani model is very clear, and they did this in Minneapolis. They did it in Dearborn, Michigan. They're doing it in New York City right before our eyes. When you change the demographics, when you import enough people from countries that don't believe in our history, that don't have any connection to our history, that don't have any tie to our values, they just come in as the gimmie-grants, then they can elect one of their own and immediately start targeting whoever it is that they've decided to steal the wealth and the affluence from. Is that what's going on in New York?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's something the founders actually spoke about a lot. Alexander Hamilton, he wrote a letter to Lafayette, and he basically said, what's good for the people of Philadelphia is not good for the people of Petersburg, so on and so forth. The idea there is not every people are capable of self-governance. When you import enough people from countries who are not capable and do not have a republic or self-government, when they come here, they bring with them that, not love of liberty, so to speak, and they vote that into place in America. And I think what's really discouraging is that Republicans, Axios had a report out last week about how Republicans are going to use Mamdani as the face of their 2026 campaign. The problem isn't that people don't know who Mamdani is. Axios had internal polling back in July. It found that he had an 81% name recognition in 16 battleground districts with a net disfavorability. And yet he still has the math to win in New York City, which means that we are importing voters and changing the electorate, as you said. So Republicans thinking they're going to beat the socialism as Badger and it's going to finally work next year have really lost their minds and seem to not care about the future of the country.
And I look at it from the Democrat perspective, and I just say, this is strategy. This is not a glitch. This is an aberration. This is the culmination of strategy. And we've seen them use this time and time again, because what do? They take the useful idiots, they gather them all together and say, hey, this guy just cares about love and equality and equity. But underneath all of it is this searing resentment, this anger, this envy, and this disassociation with reality where it's like, we all kind of know. And you can notice this, by the way, and I'll give you a great example, is that Mamdani has toned down his anti-white rhetoric, but only for like the last couple of months, because you can go to his Twitter account and he has years upon years of attacking white people, targeting white people, saying that white people are the problem. He had a quote up from just a few years ago saying that the black and brown alliance will overcome white supremacy in this nation. He's being very honest about what his political agenda is.
Yeah, and it's interesting because grievance-based politics, identity-based politics, it's actually not that popular anymore, even among the Democratic base. We've seen polling come out. Semaphore, I think, had something recently where people are saying Democrats are focusing on these fringe social and cultural issues rather than real world problems. So I think Mamdani fits to that. I also think it's really upsetting to see how many Democrats have either explicitly or implicitly endorsed Mamdani. Look, you go back to 1 year ago, almost today, and you saw the entire country shifted right. And what that tells us is there is no national mandate for Democrats to embrace or endorse a far left radical like Mamdani. And yet they did that. I think Tom Suozzi was one of the only Democrats who said, this is crazy, guys, right? But he is no longer one of the mainstream voice or one of the bigger voices of his own party. I also think it's interesting, we talk about useful idiots. I don't think a lot of people actually like socialism. I think even some of Mamdani's voters don't like socialism, but they like a slick talking politician who feels like you can sit down and have a beer with. And over the past few days, we've all been talking about SNAP benefits being cut off, right? And there are 42 million Americans out there with a lot of them saying, wait a second, I trusted the government. I gave the responsibility of feeding myself to the government. Now they're turning the spigot off. That's actually socialism, right? That's what happens when you give the government too much power, and they don't like it. But they don't seem to recognize that that is what far left Democrats like Mamdani, AOC, the Squad actually embrace. So there's a serious disconnect that I think Republicans should try to fill the gap in, which is educating voters about what socialism is in real time.
Well, and it's also this, right? It's the repudiation of, and I said this the other day and it just kind of came to me, where when you look at Mamdani and you look at the things that he stands for, the grievance-based politics that you mentioned, and I'm here, I'm at Turning Point headquarters. This is where we always come for election week. We're going to be doing the super stream tomorrow night, obviously with, our friend and compatriot will not be joining us, but we'll be doing it in his honor. And the way Charlie lived his life, I think, was trying to reach to young men and show them that there was another path. And yes, young men are obviously targeted in our society, that young men are obviously in many ways shut out of society, blamed for a lot of the problems in society. But what Charlie was trying to show was so much more in line with what our founders wanted, to say there are ways that once we clear these things out, it's not about tearing down our society. It's about actually embracing that which made America great in the first place, the ideals of our founders. And then, by the way, putting God at the center of your life, getting married, having a family, building something for yourself. This is actually the best way forward. That was the original promise of America that that's been under assault for the last 50 years.
Yeah. And one of the things that Charlie did so well is he gave young men a structure and something to kind of look up to. There was something that they could rely on. And there's an organization called SAM. And basically, they found out over the past few months that young men in particular view the Democratic Party as, one, not being in tune with their own needs and desires, and two, not providing young men with any kind of structure, whereas Republicans do provide that structure. Charlie, Turning Point, provided that structure to young men. It's why we saw such a massive shift in 2024 for men ages 18 to 29. Again, Republicans, this is their moment to seize. They can continue to capitalize on the movement that Charlie created and continue to bring young men over to our side. We don't want Democrats to somehow make grievance politics a thing again and win back those young men who are very dissatisfied with the way the country is going. And not because of Republicans, just because they've been shunned. But Democrats are good with their words. They're good with language in the battleground. And if they can use that to weaponize young men to come back to the Democratic Party, you're going to see tighter elections.
Well, and it's going to be so tough for them, right? Because you've got these candidates up there, and all they want to do is blame young men for every single problem in society. They'll say, "Oh no, it's your fault. It's your fault. You're the ones that are to blame." Even when it's like, and I've got two little boys, and I think, what do they ever do to anybody? And and suddenly it's like, oh, they're to blame. Oh yeah, because the one took the other one's toys or something. No, it's ridiculous. It's a joke. It's always been a joke, and we've completely turned our society upside down. And quite frankly, I think that it's young men who are going to be the ones that actually lead us out of that. And I think that's what Charlie was working on. And when you look at it, it's just, I don't know, there's something about how Charlie would have been 32 right now. Mamdani is 34. They're almost the same exact age, and yet complete opposite political agendas in what it was that they were preaching. Brianna, tell us your coordinates. I'd love to have you on. We'll have to do a longer conversation on all of this. Where can people get access to all your work?
Thanks so much, Jack. You can find me on Twitter at Brianna Lyman 2 or right at the Federalist for Brianna Lyman.
Yeah, check out the Federalist. She does incredible work over there. She's been going on a lot of combative media, which we love to see, and we've all been sharing around. And so you've been doing a great job. Keep at it, folks. We're here, Phoenix, Arizona, Turning Point headquarters the rest of the week. Tomorrow night, the election night super stream. Make sure you stick with Human Events Daily for all the details. Right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission. Play it short.